friends at REAP, who I'll turn this over to in just a minute. I want to make sure people know where the bathrooms are because it's a little bit tricky. You go down the stairs and then down the second set of stairs and then up the ramp. So keep going down. You'll find it. And then I want to say a few words about Alaska Common Ground. We are a non-partisan, membership-supported nonprofit organization established by Alaskans, some of whom are in this room, over 30 years ago with the goal of encouraging respectful dialogue on public policy matters. Throughout our history, we have facilitated hundreds of presentations and discussions like tonight's event with the aim of encouraging understanding of issues that are vital to our state. In addition to energy, we also host events on other topics, including Alaska's fiscal issues. We hope you can join us via Zoom next Tuesday when we'll host a discussion of the Permanent Fund and who's in charge. You can find more information about our upcoming events as well as videos of many of our previous events, including several on energy and climate issues, on our website. Or stop by and say hello to Jess on the desk outside, and she has a little flyer about Tuesday's event, so you can get a little more information about that too. We are so grateful to our sponsors for tonight's program, and would like to thank Siri, Chingach Electric, and I know some of those folks are here, as well as AARP Alaska for their support. Thank you very much for helping us put this on. I'd also like to thank our members whose support makes all of our work possible, and I've seen several of you here tonight too. We always welcome new members, so please visit the table in the front for more information. And now I'm going to try and turn it, oh there he is. I'm going to try and turn it over to Donovan with REAP, who's going to give you more information about tonight's event.
Thanks, Corey. Thank you all for joining us this evening on a sunny spring day for a really important topic. I also wanted to just begin by acknowledging the lands that we're on today, the unceded territories of the Dena'ina peoples, and of course we really take their, history of stewardship and their mindset into our work every single day. REAP is also a nonprofit, and our mission is to accelerate the development of renewable energy and energy efficiency across the state of Alaska for a myriad of reasons, but including just building a brighter future for all Alaskans. So we try to bring that to heart every single day. A lot of thank yous, of course, first and foremost to the Nave for hosting us this evening. Incredible venue, and really, the opportunity to bring folks together for the timely discussion. Also to Alaska Common Ground, all of the board members, and a special shout out to Jess for putting in all the staff hours to bring this to light. Of course to Saris, our bartender in the back there, volunteer effort to get us all fed and ready for this evening. My REAP colleagues, of course, the education team and their AK Energy Smart curricula, hands-on activities to teach learners of all ages about clean energy, and shout out to AHFC as a partner in developing that curricula and bringing it to young Alaskans statewide. And then of course to our speakers, Aaron, Rochelle, Sean, Melanie, and Katie. We are also a membership-based organization with a lot of organizations across the state who support our work. Individuals donate to support our work as well. We are a nonprofit, so if you see value in the conversations that we host, the events that we put on, the work that we do, please consider either becoming a member or supporting us as a donor. And then just one more shout out that this is the first in our 4-part Spring Energy Speaker Series. So every other week we'll be hosting conversations about reforms for the railway energy grid, workforce opportunities in the clean energy sector, and then also the food energy nexus here in Alaska. So a few of those will be webinars and another will be at the Anchorage Museum. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to our email newsletter. All that sort of information is on the sign-in table, and stick with us. But without further ado, I'll hand it off to Katie to get us started, and thank you all so much again for joining us.
Donovan for always remembering all of the things before we get started so that I don't have to remember as many of them. My name is Katie Lister. I'm the Executive Director of the Renewable Energy Alaska Project. or REAP. I've been here in this position for less than a year, but have been working in the energy industry in Alaska for about 25 years. Grew up in Fairbanks and have raised my kids in Anchorage, and now, as of just actually a day and a half ago, have 3 grandchildren. So I just also want to do a shout out to all of the people who brought their kids and babies. I really appreciate seeing you here and learning, and also just engaging and kind of humanizing all of us by your presence. So I'm just going to give a kind of just a very brief intro that provides a little bit of context for the conversation, and then I'm going to turn it over to the panel. First, I want to note that the images here were part of an art installation by Megan Holton. There's an artist statement out on the at this sign-in desk, and where you can kind of learn about this and learn more about her work and kind of how she's bringing the arts into the energy conversation. But this was downtown First Friday. I think it was like the last month or the month before. It was very cold. I think it was February. That's what it was. So I think, like Donovan said, this is the first of our spring speaker series, and it's an area of really renewed focus for REAP as an organization. Energy efficiency is sort of well and long understood to offer significant opportunity for cost savings and emissions reduction and improvement in indoor air quality in Alaska and really everywhere. Southcentral Alaska is entering into a new era in energy with expiring Cook Inlet gas contracts really pretty close on the horizon. Households and businesses in Anchorage, Matsu, and the Kenai will experience really substantial increases in all of their energy costs, both electricity and in heating. Chugach's CEO in a public meeting that was held actually just earlier this week estimated that those importing LNG will increase the cost per kilowatt hour by about 12 to 24%. Which seems like a lot, it feels like a lot. I will say that it feels to me, what I have noticed in this conversation is that the media and the electric utilities are often kind of out in the public and engaged in conversation about the Cook Inlet gas shortage. And one of the things that we haven't talked as much about is the impact that it's going to have on people's heating bills. Heating bills are the bigger bill for most families and for a lot of businesses. And the portion of the bill that is actually directly impacted by the cost of liquefied natural gas is much greater. In electricity, it's about a third, and for your heating bill, it's about 80%. So I think that is part of the reason why we have this big renewed focus. We have all of these sort of energy experts up here who are going to share their different perspectives and some information, and then we'll open it up to a conversation and answer costs after that. So I think that maybe I'm gonna skip some of these comments and maybe just go to the presenters, but I just wanted to note that I think the reason that REAP is really trying to renew the focus on energy efficiency is because we have this building stock, and this building hopefully has been retrofit, so it may not be, it has, okay, good. Cooking the house in here. This building has been retrofit, but we have a lot of our building stock was really built to the fuel that was heating it. And the fuel that has been heating it has for about 45 years been relatively low, stable price natural gas. And that's because it was bought from the Cook Inlet, and that gas wasn't being sold into markets globally. And so the things like a war in Iran didn't impact the cost of our gas. That will be different in the future. Now, the war in Iran will impact, and other geopolitical events will have significant impact on the price of the fuel that we rely on to heat our homes. And so we have this building stock. We have no control over, moving forward, we don't really have any control over the price of the fuel that we need to generate electricity and to generate heat in our homes. So the thing we can't control are the number of units of that fuel that we use. And so but it's difficult, right? It's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of smaller projects. It's hard to get people's attention on, and it's hard to pay for. And so, but there are ways. Alaska has had really successful weatherization programs, both federally funded and state funded in the past, and we have seen like the good impacts of that work. So at the end of this sort of panel and the Q&A, we'll just do a little bit of a rundown of kind of what I hope you take away, or kind of leaving with a little bit of, if not optimism, then at least an idea of what you could do both on a personal level for kind of your home or your business, and at a policy level, whether it's with local government or state government, a little bit less opportunity on the federal government side, or if it is advocating for different kinds of programs within the utility that serves you to be able to address your energy needs. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Erin, and I'm going to directly read your bio, and then hand you the clicker. So Erin Cook is a licensed architect and project manager at NLR. That's the National Laboratory of the Rockies, formerly the National Renewable Energy Lab in Fairbanks, Alaska. The Center for Applied Research with Communities in Extreme Environments. It's a lot of acronym soup there. Erin has work experience across the circumpolar north with projects in Alaska, Canada, Denmark, Greenland, and Iceland, Norway, and Russia, testing new methods of building durable and energy-efficient homes in circumpolar regions. He has 18 years of architectural, construction, and research experience in Alaska and the greater Arctic. Erin's primary work primarily focuses on durable, affordable, healthy, and sustainable building design in extreme climates and remote locations. I will say that we brought Erin down from Fairbanks, but Erin, grew up in South Central, and we brought him down particularly because he's very good at just sort of like explaining what the issue is and identifying the solution. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and then I will take him right back.
All right. Oh, can you hear me? Great. Thanks for having me. My name's Aaron. Like she said, I grew up half here, half in Fairbanks. I like to think I'm the only person in the state that loves both towns equally. They both feel like home. And I devoted all my productive years to studying northern housing. That's what I like to talk about, think about, and work on. I was born here in 1974, same year as the pipeline, and just like the average house constructed in 1974, I was unplanned, brought to fruition in a big hurry on a tight budget, and now the maintenance is piling up, and I don't know how I'm going to age. It is, let's see, is this working?
Maybe point in that direction.
Where's the thing? The black box.
See, this is what happens when you decide to operate
I know. There we go. All right, and I'm just going to talk about energy trends and housing. I asked Katie what she wanted me to speak about specifically and why she'd bring me all the way down here. And she said, just talk about why housing in South Central is so terrible. I'm like, man, that's kind of a bummer. You just throw the Fairbanks kid under the bus here, you know. Because usually I'm an optimist. I focus on what we can do about it, not why it's terrible. But I'm going to go first, and then these other lovely people will talk about what we can do about it. Go ahead. So, why are we in the situation we're in? Well, the truth is, let's take a step back. You know, the truth is, it's been getting better my whole lifetime. Every year, we see from the Alaska housing assessments that we've done in 2008, 2018. Is there anyone here from Agnew Beck? Agnew Beck is working on the next one. We do these housing assessments every decade. Every year, if you look here from the 70s, 80s, to 90s, both in Anchorage and in the Mat-Su Valley, the average energy use intensity, which is just a nerdy metric we use for how much energy you have to put in per square foot to any building that you're trying to heat, it's getting better every decade, and we should be happy with that, right? Additionally, the air tightness of our homes is getting better. We're ventilating more than we used to. I grew up in an unventilated home. The amount of ventilated homes and airtight homes is going up. And so it's not all doom and gloom. Next slide, please. So the most natural question is, if it keeps getting better every decade, then why is our housing still so bad? And it's because of when it was built, right? So if you look in Anchorage, for instance, look at those giant amounts of housing built in the 70s and 80s. You know, that's where most of our stock is coming from. The same is true, and this is also from the 2008 housing assessment. Mat-Su has a bit of a time lag, right? Their boom came a little later, and so you see more good housing being done in the 90s and 2000s, but we are going to be stuck with the housing that's here that was built in the boom for the foreseeable future. if Fairbanks were up here, and we're gonna focus on South Central today, but if Fairbanks were up here, it would follow gold, war, oil, right? That's pretty much it. We build during the boom, and when you build in a hurry, it comes out fairly predictably. And so, there's no time machine to go back and do anything about that. In fact, depending on how you think about human nature, if they all of a sudden have to build a giant gas line, it's probably going to happen again, right? When you build during a boom, you build in a hurry. It's hard to maintain those standards. And if we go to the next slide, it's important to think about what can we do with the existing housing stock, right? Because 80% of we always talk about climate goals. Most of them are like 2050. How much energy efficiency or how many CO2 units are going to use by 2050? Well, 80% of the buildings that are going to be here in 2050 are already here, and they're not that great. So we need to think about ways that we deal with the housing that we have, realistically, not like a D9 retrofit, but like ways that we can actually improve the housing we're using. And we've had success. Alaska has had, on your pessimistic days, remember really great successes with retrofitting houses. We put, between 2008 and 2018, $250 million worth of investment into retrofitting the houses, the poorly performing houses that we had, and got back within 10 years all of that investment in terms of how much energy we have to put into it. And that's, I'm talking 115 million gallons of oil equivalent just in a decade. There are programs that have worked in the past, and this is just urban areas. If you go one step further to rural areas, next slide please, for weatherization programs of existing homes, we've been able to recover almost 50 million gallons of unused oil as well, just by changing the houses that are already built. And those are still tools, that's still building, that's not that fancy of building science. These are established techniques we have on envelope retrofits, foundation retrofits. There's entities like Cold Climate Housing Research Center, AHA, the Alaska Association of Housing Authorities themselves, REAP, the National Lab, that are all kind of working on this together. The science is out there. And so how does it translate? Because I wasn't going to go away with just talking about why it's crappy. I want to talk about what we can do about it just a little bit. But whether or not we solve the natural gas problem in Anchorage, does it work?
Am I controlling anything down there?
Oh, there we go.
Okay, all right.
We should be thinking in terms of what we can do as a society and what we can do as individuals. As a society, whether it be a town or a borough or a state, we should be looking, there's often this politicized argument between handling it on the demand side or handling it on the supply side. And that is silly and unnecessarily divisive. We should be working on reducing demand and producing more supply simultaneously. And that doesn't need to be politicized. Whatever we get our next energy from, we should need less of it. It's not political to, I used to drive a 73 Land Cruiser, and now I drive like a modern car. It gets a lot better gas mileage. That's not a political thing. It's exciting to have a truck that gets a lot better gas mileage. We should view our buildings the same way, wherever the energy comes from. If we are individuals, and we're looking down the barrel, like my mother lives here in town, in a crappy condo, you know, with 2x4 walls. And I've been telling her for 15 years to get out of that condo before gas goes up in town. What can we do as individuals? If you want to buy a house that you like and put money into retrofitting it, that is a tool that you have in this town. Ask Griffin for his notes. He could tell you all how to do it. Or you could buy a better house, and it's going to cost you more money, which is also an acceptable path. Or you can build a house, and then it's in your control to reduce demand or focus on what your supply is going to be. In the short term, what I tell my mother is you need a second heating supply, so you're not just a slave to whatever natural gas does at any given time. In Fairbanks, that can be wood and a masonry heater. In Southeast, that's often a heat pump. These are very localized approaches to a secondary heat source. I know from maybe much of Alaska standards, Anchorage is one of the more benign climate zones, but it's still really cold here, and any place where it gets cold enough to kill you, your house should not have one heating source. It should have two, and hopefully not the same fuel type. And so that's something you can strategically do to your home. The other thing is, since heat pumps, the only reason heat pumps have not really gotten into Anchorage is not because of your climate, it's just because of the artificially low cost of natural gas. If that goes away, this could be a great town. Finally, what do we do as renters? I mean, you really, if you want to control your destiny, it's hard to do that as a renter, unless you're going back to society. How do you get involved with organizations like REAP, with organizations like some of the other people that are doing good work to steal policy? And then that's the only way you're going to really help yourself in the rental market. So I hope that wasn't completely depressing, but now this is going to be really uplifting. Right?
That was great. Thank you, Aaron. All right. Okay, next we have Sean Holdridge. Sean is the Director of Construction and Energy Sustainability for Cook Inlet Housing Authority and has been with Cook Inlet Housing Authority since 2007. He oversees their in-house construction department as well as the weatherization and residential rehab programs. When he's not in the office, you can find him driving around Anchorage in the winter looking at snow on roofs to see where the heat loss is happening. And I will add to his very brief bio here that was provided that one of the reasons, that I thought it was really important to have Cook Inlet Housing as a part of this conversation in Anchorage is because they have been building really good, high-efficiency housing stock in this town for many, many years, and they're largely alone. I mean, there are individuals that do it, but just as a major developer of both single-family and multifamily high-efficiency housing, I think they really are a leader in that space. So I want to appreciate the organization for that as well.
Great, thank you. It's a little loud. So early on, we made a commitment to build the most efficient houses that we could. And that was largely due to, we own and operate all of our units. And so we have over 1,700 units today. And so that was a commitment we made early on, and we've stayed with that commitment throughout the years. I will say the other reason why is, a lot of our developments, we use the low-income tax credit program, and that's administered through AHFC, and AHFC incentivizes us to build more efficient homes. And so those two married together perfectly, and that's what we do, and that's what we'll keep doing. Katie asked me to speak a little bit about how we go into a neighborhood. How do we pick a neighborhood that we're going to go into? One of the first ones we went into was Mountain View, and we're still doing work there today. We just finished the Brewster's development last year. We've spent roughly almost $100 million in Mountain View, but really what we did is we sat down with the census data and looked at that data and studied it and found out where there was a large population of low-income folks, where there was a large population of Alaska Native folks. And so what came out of that study was really, we needed to go into Mountain View, and that's what we did. It just so happens our former CEO grew up in Mountain View too, so. But we went into Mountain View and just started retrofitting housing, existing housing. We built a ton of new housing there. And then later in years, we started seeing neighbors fixing up their houses next to ours. We started seeing the credit union came in. That was I think one of the, financial institution hadn't been in Mountain View in probably decades. So you started seeing things, other people doing stuff alongside of us, which was really one of our goals. One of the next neighborhoods we went into more recently is Spenard. We didn't have to look at census data for Spenard. We live here basically, right? So, one of the first properties we bought was right across the street over here. Used to be an old gas station, Alpina's. And then PJ's, Papa Joe's, that got seized by the federal government, and we went at auction, live auction in the parking lot. And we were bidding against people that were calling in, and I felt it was sort of a rigged auction, but whatever, we got it. And so we started accumulating stuff around Spenard. The property across kitty corner over here where the gas station was, I think there was like 8 different properties behind it that we had to secure. So over the years, you know, we would find owners that wanted to sell, and we just kept accumulating properties. And then that whole development took almost 15 years to complete. You know, there was contaminated soils, there was all sorts of stuff. And so we've been doing a lot of infill in Spenard as well, so we pick up lots here and there. We're kind of known for buying properties that are in the worst condition, that has, you know, contamination and all sorts of problems, but we know how to do it, and that's what we've been doing around Spenard. Katie mentioned earlier, had this building been renovated? Yes. We've spent almost $3 million on this building, and a lot of it was in energy efficiency stuff. Insulation on the roof, the walls, new windows, new HVAC. So yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about our weatherization programs. Currently, can you go back one? Yeah, thank you. So currently we have 3 buckets of money that we're doing weatherization with. And the first one is basically state of Alaska money administered through our friends at HFC. And the amount varies from year to year. My next slide, I'm going to show you a little bit more about that, but not yet though. We've weatherized almost 1,400 homes since 2008 in this program, so it's been great to have that program around so long. The other one we're doing right now is the Affordable Housing Program. That's funded through the Federal Home Loan Bank in Des Moines. We secured $1 million, and it's a 3-year grant, so we're just getting ready to fire up that program this summer. And over the next 3 years, we'll weatherize a bunch of homes with that. And we used this program back in 18 and 19, and we were able to do 24 homes then. The last one has been the Homeowners Assistance Fund. We call it HAF, and that's funded by the U.S. Treasury. That was a result of COVID money. And we have to spend that money by September of this year. We secured $4 million for that over 4 years. We've done 85 homes. We'll probably end up right around 100 homes by September, so that's been great. Next slide, please. So this is the weatherization program, as I mentioned earlier. It's State of Alaska funds administered through AHFC. The reason why I put this slide together is I wanted to point out something. You can see how many homes we were able to do with the funding each year. And if you look at 2010 and 11, the state was really investing in weatherization. And then all of a sudden it dropped off dramatically. Anytime you can talk to your legislators and push the funding for weatherization, please do it. Because we're not going to get a whole lot done doing 6 homes a year. And that's not a knock on HFC. They're just administering the program. So, anyways, that's all I've got. Thanks.
and I think that I asked specifically really to be like try and drive that point home, because I run into folks all of the time who, when I talk to them about energy efficiency or just about kind of Anchorage as home to tens of thousands of households that are low and low moderate income and really can't kind of, take on a doubling of their home heating bills in the winter. A lot of times people will be like, well, there's that program, there's like weatherization program that low income people can get their houses fixed. Yes, 5 of them. And so I think that's just wanted to, make sure that folks are kind of tracking that the level of effort is not kind of meeting the need by a long shot right now. I'm gonna pass it to Rochelle next. Rochelle Johnson is the Energy and Sustainability Manager at the Municipality of Anchorage Solid Waste Services, where her role is to manage renewable energy and energy efficiency projects for the utility, as well as energy and sustainability programming across the municipality. And Rochelle, I'm gonna pass it on.
Is this on? Now it's on. I'm also gonna stand up so I don't forget that I have slides. Hello, I'm Rochelle. I decided to start with a fun fact for this talk today, but I grew up in Eagle River on what used to be the old homestead down Eagle River Valley, one of the old homesteads down Eagle River Valley. My home when I was growing up was literally built out of snow machine boxes. Like when I was 10, pulling the siding down to replace it, and it had Skidoo stamped on the side. As I was growing up, I watched my dad, who was a skilled tradesman, retrofit our entire home top to bottom, basically. Do all of the upgrades that he could possibly do to make our home as energy efficient as possible. And growing up, it was very clear that was an enormous challenge and an enormous financial burden on our family to make those choices. And one of the things I think keeps me up at night when I think about energy efficiency across the municipality and what we're doing for our residents and business owners is that if it's hard for someone who knows what they're doing to make the choices and do the projects to make energy efficiency upgrades, it is enormously harder for those that don't know where to start, don't know the resources that are available, don't know what sort of like building codes they have to navigate, and the permitting processes. Like these are all sort of barriers to entry for energy efficiency for our residents. And that's a real downer moment for things that I think about at 2 a.m. But so I think like one of the roles that we have as a municipality is to really like invest time and thought into thinking about ways that we can reduce those barriers of entry for our residents and for our businesses, and create programs and policies that create sort of like a supportive pillow for them to navigate that ecosystem. I'm going to go through next slide. A couple of things that we're doing internally and thinking about internally, like within the municipality, and then cover a couple of projects and programs that the municipality has been working on specifically for housing and energy efficiency. I like to sort of bifurcate these two things because I think a lot of people don't think of the municipality as like we are a building manager for a lot of facilities across the municipality, and all of those buildings need power and heat, and most of them were built in the 80s and are not very efficient. And so one of the things that we really try to think about, or our facilities maintenance crews really try to think about, is making energy efficiency improvements as they can. Developing those retrofit projects and making the choice to implement the best energy efficient technology when they need to replace water heaters and whatnot. We're trying to make an effort to do that on a larger scale and look at we've done a lot of the work that is the easy stuff like LED lights, but we need to take that next step. And that's really our responsibility to the taxpayers as well, because energy costs impact the taxpayers. The other side of that is making sure that we're using and maximizing the energy resources that we have, putting solar panels on our facilities, developing beneficial uses for our landfill gas, and maximizing that resource both in terms of heat, power, transportation fuels, really making the best investment decisions we can. On the external side, we've got a couple of levers that we really are leaning into. The first is building codes and zoning changes to make development easier for the city. And the second is sort of making those choices to develop funding streams for businesses and residents to rehab or redevelop properties. Next slide. Oh, it did mutate, weird. Sorry about that. So these are not my programs. I'm just here to talk about them and shine lights on the good work that my colleagues are doing at the municipality. But there's sort of two highlighted programs that I think are like really speak to energy efficiency right now. And neither of them are really like built with the energy efficiency as the goal. But anytime we're making the choice to renovate or redevelop a property, you can make the choice to target those energy efficiency improvements. So if you hear about these in the news, then just know that I'm thinking about them as energy efficiency programs, and you can as well. The first program is the mobile home unit replacement project. The municipality last year passed two ordinances that improved the zoning restrictions for replacement of mobile home units. Mobile homes are most of them are very inefficient across the municipality, and many of our mobile home units are also very old, very much in need of replacement. Many of the families that live in them are amongst our lowest income families across the municipality, and the cost of replacing a mobile home unit in Anchorage is almost the cost of building a new home. Putting that on a temporary foundation, it's sort of it's almost impossible barrier for most families to face. And so this mobile home unit replacement ordinances really changed sort of what you can put on a temporary foundation, and improved it so that you can put like a tiny home or a prefabricated home onto a temporary foundation, a home that could also get put on a permanent foundation. That's the goal there, and the goal is to really like reduce that barrier, but it also provides that opportunity to come in with a more efficient housing unit for our mobile homes. The second is a new program that is in the works, the housing rehab program that you may have seen in the news. It was announced this month, but the municipality pulled together about $700,000 of seed fund from HUD funding, and they're using it to develop a housing renovation and rehabilitation program. The first half of that funding for that program is going to be targeted at redevelopment of vacant or derelict properties. The goal is to put additional units and redevelop those into rental units for rental properties for the property owners. The second half of that is rehab of existing properties, because we know that it's not, when the mayor talks about building 100,000 homes, not 100,000, that would be a lot, 10,000 homes in the next 10 years. Half of that has to come in from rehabilitation of existing housing stock. We don't have the space to build 10,000 homes in Anchorage, and so we really have to invest in what we have. And the goal of this program is to target and support the homeowners who need to make life-saving retrofit and renovations to their properties. Both the new unit development and rehab of existing units is both both targeted at low-income property owners, which I realize is a very small percentage of the population, and $700,000 is a very small pot of money. But the goal is to start the conversation and grow from there. Next slide. Yeah, I guess what I will leave you with is that one of the big things that we worry about is rental housing and the impacts that energy efficiency has on rental housing. My goal today is to listen to the folks here and to you in the room and see if there are programs and policies that we can implement as a municipality to really target that population within Anchorage, because it's probably the most challenging nut to crack. Yeah.
Thank you, Rochelle. Before I turn it over to our last speaker, I just want to kind of tag on to that and note that about 75% of low-income people rent. And so rental housing should be a significant priority. A lot of the things that, a lot of the solutions that often get offered regarding energy efficiency really rely on, are really most appropriate for either middle and upper income households, and certainly for folks who own their homes, because you need to have the renter's permission and you need to have an incentive. So definitely want to just kind of elevate that the folks who will be most impacted are largely in rental housing. All right, Melanie, now solution for rental housing. No, just joking. Okay, so Melanie Lucas.
Sorry to disappoint.
Yeah, Melanie Lucas Conwell. Melanie leads the Alaska Sustainable Energy Corporation. This was not written in her bio, but I will just say in parentheses, the Green Bank, a subsidiary of the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation, which supports the financing of sustainable energy developments across the state. Prior to that role, she was the director of the municipality of Anchorage, leading the 49th State Angel Fund and Anchorage's CPACER, which is the Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy and Retrofit?
Resilience.
Resilience.
So you retrofit.
Or what the R stands for, program. So I think Melanie is, I just want to also note that the Alaska Sustainable Energy Corporation is a product of a piece of legislation that it passed not that many years ago. I sort of forget when it was, maybe like
24. 2024.
The legislation was passed in 24? Okay, so yeah, just 2 years ago. So it is relatively new. There are not programs are not out and running on the street. We're giving it the legislation was passed at a time when there was an expectation that there was going to be a large amount of GGRF, or greenhouse gas reduction funds, available from the feds, about $20 billion. That a lot of folks kind of stood up programs to catch that money, and then when the current federal administration came in, that money disappeared. So we have the bucket. We need to put money in it so we can roll out the programs. And Melanie has designed the bucket and is here to talk about what it can do for us.
Thank you, Katie. Well, it's perfect. That takes away a lot of my talking points. I'll go to Steve. And with that, thank you, everyone. All right. Oh, they do look a little bit different. All right. So, as Katie mentioned, Melanie Lucas Conwell with the Alaska Sustainable Energy Corporation. I will refer to it as ASEC for short, given how long of a name that is, including my own. We were signed into law by Governor Dunleavy in 2024 through House Bill 273 with the purpose, very specific purpose, of financing or facilitating the financing of sustainable energy projects in Alaska, with a focus on residential buildings, commercial buildings, and community facilities in Alaska. And we were incorporated officially as a nonprofit subsidiary corporation to the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation in November 2024. And it has been a journey ever since then. Next slide, please. So what do we actually mean when we talk about sustainable energy projects that we might be able to finance or facilitate financing for? Alaska statute has a lot of words describing those types of projects, and it can go from very big, shiny projects such as solar farms, wind turbines, all the way down to the nitty-gritty electrical infrastructure that is in our homes, or even insulation. Anything that might save money on our utility bills is what it boils down to. Next slide. We are lucky that we are not alone in the green banking space. There are over 40 programs like ours around the country, spanning from, well, the first one started in 2011 with the Connecticut Green Bank, which I know Bert Hunter with the Connecticut Green Bank has come up a fair amount of times to Alaska to help stand up our program, which has been fantastic thanks to Reed. All the way out to Hawaii. So a lot of programs, a lot of regions, which means that I don't need to get to start from scratch. I get to take proven models from across the country, take what might work best for Alaska, bring it here, and make the best use of our funds. Next slide. So what exactly are we talking about? Essentially, ASEC is a bridge between private capital on the right and project demand on the left, being that bridge for projects that might otherwise not have financing or that lenders might think are risky, but which we know aren't that risky since they're saving money on our utility bills. But lenders have their financial models that they're relying on, and therefore we are coming in to help de-risk those transactions so that we can help Alaskans see reductions on their utility bills at the end of the day. Next slide. And there's 2 more clicks while we're at it. There we go. So there are a few different financial techniques that we can use as part of ASEC that we will bring to market. We are not a grant-giving organization. We do expect a return on our investments, but as a government entity, our role really is to de-risk these private capital transactions that might happen. And again, learning from and utilizing what other green banks around the country have used so that we're, again, not starting from scratch. So these are 3 examples where we come into a financial transaction and help de-risk and essentially reduce the cost of the financial transaction for either a homeowner, building owner, project developer of different types. Next slide. And so we're happy to share that we are currently actively designing our very first program that was funded by the Department of Energy in partnership with the Alaska Energy Authority to provide lower interest rate loans for homeowner energy efficiency improvements. Essentially, anything that you would see on an energy audit that would be recommended for your home to save on your utility bills. Now, don't get too excited. We're probably a year out from actually launching it, but I am very excited to start that design phase and start gathering feedback, particularly from contractors and lenders at this stage as we design a program that we can partner with them on actively through this next year. And all of these items here are examples of improvements that we might be able to finance through this program, of course, at the discretion of lenders that we will be working with. But certainly very excited to start bringing some solutions for folks to start reducing their energy bill and pay back these loans with the energy savings that they will see from these improvements. And I will add to the collection of Municipality of Anchorage programs for commercial property owners that the CPACER program, which is a very long acronym, Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy and Resilience, also works on retrofits, is available within the municipality as well in the Matanuska-Susitna Borough for commercial property owners that are looking to make improvements on their homes that might reduce the utility bills for their tenants or even for themselves. Next slide. And that's all. I encourage you to take your phone out, take a picture if you do want to connect, or sign up for our newsletter. That's how we will spread the word about our programs as they come online. And looking, again, to connect with folks, particularly contractors and lenders about this upcoming program, but also in general. If you have project ideas that you think should be financed, I've had a lot of phone calls from folks this past year looking for financing or funding alternatives. There are always opportunities that seem to come up when you least expect them. So helping be that nexus between capital and projects in Alaska in this space. Thank you.
questions in the audience, raise your hand. We have a couple of roving mics. I mean, I also have questions, so if there are not questions from the audience, we can go to those, but maybe we'll just give it a moment. Also, if anybody needs a reminder about where the bathroom is, it's all the way downstairs and then turn right and go up the ramp. I see a question in the back.
Are any of you pursuing the plug-in solar? I know there's legislation at the state level, but you can get it here in Anchorage a lot quicker.
I will say that it's definitely something that we've discussed as a potential opportunity across like our municipal facilities. We haven't investigated farther than that seems interesting, and we don't know enough about it yet. Yeah.
Yeah, I will share that the plug-in solar kind of in its current journey in the Alaska State Legislature is running into some headwinds from folks who have some safety concerns, and there has been some public questioning and concerns from both utilities and from the IBEW about the legislation as currently drafted. I will say that there are people who have plug-in solar, that I don't know if in Anchorage that much. REAP does not have it as a particularly high priority. They are interesting and good, and I think can be a part of the equation. A relatively small amount of renewable energy for sure. I think the current is like 1,200 watts, and sort of a general standard kind of residential single-family installation is closer to like 3 to 5 kilowatts, not watts.
Hi, this question is for Melanie. Would heat pumps qualify as a residential efficiency improvement?
We are certainly working towards that direction.
Hi, I'm Jim Northern. I'm on the GS Electric Board and on the REAP board for that matter too. A question for Melanie. And by the way, our CEO Arthur Miller is here with us, and some of our other board members are here as well. But question for Melanie. I'm just going to call it the Green Bank. I haven't got familiar with that. Okay, right. Either way, but is there a process to make use of the facility that you've created through ASAP for utilities like Chugach to pass on potential energy savings things to our members?
So it's all funding dependent. Great question, thank you. We're certainly wanting to work in partnership with utilities across the state, particularly Chugach Electric, given the prevalence of it in, serving a large portion of our state's population. It's all funding dependent, depending on where. So right now the funding we're looking at is through the Department of Energy for this specific program. If we had other funding sources, absolutely would want to collaborate and see how could we work with the utilities, either in partnership with the utilities, through the utilities, for example, on-bill financing. Hawaii, their Green Bank has, facilitates and administers their on-bill financing program, so there are certainly a lot of ways that we can partner.
We do on-bill financing for all of the rail belt utilities. One-stop shop.
And I'll need more staff to do so too. Currently staff of 2.
Hi, thank you again for this great panel and for including housing authorities in the discussion. I mean, Cook Inlet's got north of 1,800 units here in town, right, Sean? The big lever to pull. I'm curious about the role of benchmarking, and anybody can speak to this. So, garbage in, garbage out, with like assumptions about energy efficiency, right? 2 big trends in the last 7 to 10 years are the proliferation of low-cost consumer-grade sensors that measure everything, and then the broadband build-out across our state. So energy data has typically been a sticking point. How do we get to a place where energy efficiency is not just like this noble social good, and is actually an investment-grade, procurable energy resource?
Well, I think the first thing you want to do is get the appraisers and assessors on board so that they need to use that data. And there's been headway in the last 10 years on training up the appraisers and assessors to demand good data on energy efficiency and be able to quantify that into an asking price. Not as much headway as we would like, but more than existed 10 years ago, because zero of that existed 10 years ago. I think what you need is both sides of the equation of the purchase of a home or of a building to care about the data. If only the buyer cares about the data of energy efficiency, but the seller does not, and the bank does not, then you're never going to get there. But if the bank cares about the data of the energy efficiency and it affects their investment, then suddenly we have more interest in benchmarking our data. I believe we're heading that way too slowly, but we're heading that way. So any way that we can push that a little bit, and really, that's probably not going to be the housing authorities. That's going to be the real estate community, right? And I don't. If I knew how to influence the real estate community, I wouldn't have hidden building signs for the last 18 years.
I'll maybe just add two little anecdotes to that, just because I did have spent my entire life in Alaska, but took a 5-year hiatus and moved to Portland, Oregon, where you can sort the MLS by energy intensity. And so I only considered houses that had the lowest energy use. And those assessments are done primarily by trained real estate agents, and all kind of go into a database and hook up with the MLS and Zillow. So it's very easy. I mean, I think that that's one of the big things, right? Is that it needs to be easy, and that exists because the city requires it to exist. And so it is, the assembly voted on it and they instituted, and it's policy. Maybe one more just quick anecdote, that in Denver were having pretty poor uptake on their CPACE program, and now they have exceptionally good uptake. And when I was talking with folks at the city of Denver, I was like, what happened? Like, how did you do that? And they said, oh, we just started requiring it and having penalties if it didn't happen. And I was like, there you go, policy.
I guess I'll add on to that sometimes data starts at saying, yes, we have data and we should look at it. When I started in my current role almost a year ago, one of the first things that I did was track down every single utility meter that we have at Solid Waste Services and generate a comprehensive report of like the last 2 years worth of data, so that we could see month by month what are we spending our money on and our heat and power on, and that immediately started influencing our decisions on what projects we invested in. And when we turned the solar panels back on, and what we invested our time in. And so one of my goals this year is to do that at the municipality wide, to say we know where our energy is going and why. And I think it's such a simple first step, but if you don't start with the easy step, then you can't do the harder stuff. Yeah.
Can't manage what you don't measure.
Yeah.
I love data, Griffin, but I don't think, I would do it in my house, but I'm a data junkie, and I don't know if everyone else, would want to take that initiative, especially when you're adding costs. It could be relatively minor costs, but you're adding costs to a building or a house. That's the last thing we want to do with these prices we're paying for homes, right? So I think that's a hurdle, I guess is what I'm saying. For us, we monitor all of our solar. I'm the guy that looks at it. I love that data. If we started monitoring all 1,800 units of ours, you would need like a full-time me plus somebody else probably to do that. So there has to be a commitment from the housing authority to do that. We tried that when I got hired, but I'm also a good project manager, so I get pulled into managing projects and not spending time on the data. So it's a constant battle, but yeah, I love data.
Hi, Hi, I'm Penny Gage. I'm a candidate for the Chiganch Electric Board, and you will all, if you pay an electric bill in Anchorage, receive a ballot on April 29th, and I hope you all vote. We have very low voter turnout, and so judging by the size of this room tonight, I'm hoping that we have some engaged people around these issues. So on the radio this morning in the car, I was listening to the measures they're taking in certain Asian countries around gas due to conflict in Iran and the Strait of Hormuz blocking gas supplies. So things like shorter showers, not allowing folks to use elevators, telling people to charge their phones at certain times of day, big austerity measures and demand side measures from the government. In Anchorage, when would we need to consider things like that? Are we there yet? When would we be there? And we're talking all about voluntary measures, voluntary financing and programs. And listening to the radio this morning just made me think a little differently about this crisis that we're facing on price and supply. Thanks.
I can take first go at that since I see just kind of, Rochelle trying to move the microphone around unsuccessfully here. I think that we're going to get, we will be in the same boat as particularly, Asia right now is really feeling the impacts of the war in Iran. And I think that, sort of like we talked about before, Alaska or Southcentral Alaska has really been insulated from the volatility of fuels that are impacted by geopolitical events. Anywhere that we have had access to cook inlet gas. And so that's, mostly South Central and then a little bit of electricity, although not recently, on the northern end of the rail belt. So I think that the answer is that it's coming, and it's coming because of just market forces, right? Like the prices are going to increase, and we as consumers will start to need programs. I do hope, we have luckily kind of the enabling pieces in place, right? We have the ability, statute has been passed that allows on-bill financing to happen through utilities. It's not necessarily happening, but we wouldn't need to go to the legislature to enable it. And so there may come a time when there's enough consumer pressure, and there's enough, households that are unable to pay their bills, that those types of mechanisms get brought into play. I hope it's sooner than later. I will say I think we definitely want to prioritize households that we know and consumers that we know are going to be impacted most fastest, and really think about what we can do now so that in 5 years when ENSTAR's contracts start to expire for cook inlet gas and their electric rates have already gone up and it's just sort of piling on, that they are more ready to be able to weather that change.
It's all the more reason we need more funding for weatherization, right? Tell you a quick, story. I used to own a home up in Bear Valley, and I got into the HFC energy rebate program, and hired an energy rater, came out, did a blower door on my house, 14 air changes per hour. Yeah, that's bad, right? So every hour, all the air in my house was going out of the door 14 times, right? So I went through and did all the modifications and everything, and I got it down to 7 air changes per hour. Basically cut it in half. My gas bill was cut in half as well, which was great. House was more comfortable. However, all the homes we're building today are 2 to 3 air changes per hour, and that's kind of really where we want to be. So I'm not bragging I got it to 7, I'm just saying it was a leaky house, right? And we were spending a ton of money on gas.
And the timing is so important. That very successful housing retrofit and weatherization program in the, from say 2008 to 2018, let's say, what was the first year of the housing retrofit program? Anyone remember?
It was 2009.
2009. That was on the heels of many fuel crises, right? 2006, 7, 8. Things got very expensive at the pump. Things got very expensive for heating oil, and that created a need to create these programs, it would be too late to wait 5 years for ENSTAR's leases to expire to start a program like that. It should be done before that cliff. That's really when that program can do the most good. We know that people are smartest when they have to be. And when we don't have to be, we get pretty stupid pretty quickly because it's, it's just that's the way we're built. But when you look at the cliff coming, it allows us a rare luxury to be smart ahead of time because we don't always know when gas prices. Hey, who would have guessed about Iran, like 3 years ago? But we can see the future when it comes to our natural gas. We can see 5 years in the future. So that program, instead of happening in 2033, it should be happening in 2028, 2027. And this is a rare luxury to be able to see that coming.
Hi, I'm Haley Reed, and I previously worked with REAP, and I'm on the board of the Climate Housing Research Center, so I feel like I'm a little more familiar with weatherization and energy efficiency than maybe the average homeowner. I recently purchased a home that's older than Aaron, 1966, and using all the resources I can, a roofer, an energy auditor, there seems to not be one answer to weatherize my home and make it more energy efficient. And so I'm curious if there is an answer that contractors and Anchorage's workforce is knowledgeable of, or if all I'm hearing is the unintended consequences of tightening your house and obviously doing my own research, but when each house is different and mine's ancient, then how is one, including myself who is very familiar with this topic, is the workforce out there and the average contractor able to solve the problem without excessive unintended consequences, or is that something that is being considered?
I'll say that, we do a ton of work with contractors, right? And the majority of them are not up to snuff with building science and how things work. And so, I see what you're running into all the time. We've cultivated relationships with our contractors and we've worked with them long enough that we've kind of pounded it into their head, so they're used to it. But if you get the average contractor that's not familiar with building science, which is quite a few of them, you're gonna run into, it's gonna be harder to get to where you want to be. So, So I guess you could call me and ask for who we're using.
I would say maybe just to add on a little bit to that, and Aaron, I don't know if you have things to add too, but I think that's one of the reasons why programs that are a little bit more centralized have had some success in other markets, right? Like, so if you can build enough of a pipeline for contractors, then you can do things like require that they have certain certifications. Then it's worth their time, right? If they know they're going to get 20 to 100 jobs out of it, then maybe it's worth going and getting boned up on the building science and getting certified in different ways. If it's a one job or maybe one in 6 months or something, then it's probably not a good business investment for them.
I was actually having a conversation about this at lunch today, and it is, very few energy auditors do it as their sole gig. The best ones do, but good luck getting them more than a few months ahead of time. Generally, it's a side hustle, and so they're in construction or remodeling in some fashion, and then they do energy audits or they do retrofit weatherization analysis on the side until a big program comes along, because that's the market, right? The market for a new crop of talented energy auditors out there is a program like the one in 2018. Then they know that they're going to be able to not have 2 jobs or 3 jobs, that can be their gig. And then they're going to the same conferences, and then they're, kind of in that wonderfully capitalist way, kind of innovating and being able to improve their game. in the slow years, where there's just not as much being done, you're getting whoever you can, and they're only doing that for part of their deal. Once the market comes, you know, and that is a way that the housing authorities have an advantage, is they have a stock, and so they can go with the best folks all the time. But HFC has been organizing courses for more of these auditors, and the question is, okay, well, where's the market? Because it seemed like all the money just all the public money just disappeared at Bidco, so am I gonna leave what I'm doing right now, roofing, or, you know, you can always be a roofer in this town, you can't always be an energy auditor. And so that kind of market needs to follow it. Otherwise, Haley, I'd say the best thing to do is invite your friend at the National Lab to dinner.
And maybe something to consider as this sort of the Alaska Sustainable Energy Corporation is kind of building out programs, right? Like there are green banks around the country that have approved contractor lists, for example, that you need to use if you're going to be able to access this sort of easier and cheaper financing, and that could be something that might be able to generate some of that demand for better training for contractors.
In the old days, that's something that CCHRC used to do. You used to be able to call CCHRC and say, I'm here. Give me the four best of the best when it comes to energy audits and this type of thing, and they tell you. And so I think that can come back.
I have a list of energy auditors that was made by someone named Melanie. But that brings up the point that programs like CPACER also have lists of contractors that they frequently encounter and their partners and work with. You can always reach out to.
And I'll say that list is commercial projects. There's one in the room. Hi, Jim. And it's self-registered as well.
So, and I think Megan had a question, sorry, real quick.
It was also about the workforce, but just to follow up a little bit on that, do you think there's like a lower bar for energy raters that might be needed? So when you do an energy audit, you end up with like a menu of choices, and some of them are quite complicated, and it's hard for homeowners to decide what to do. Is there a version that can get you to like the 7-year changes per hour just with air? Like, do we need an energy auditor who comes around and really is just like looking for where the holes need to be sealed? Or do you really think like we need to have like a market of energy auditors that are at like the standard that we're working at now? Like, is there a place for like sort of a lower tier of energy raters?
So I want to make a distinction here. HFC has a list of energy raters. Energy raters are in the residential space. They'll come out for relatively inexpensive. They'll do a blower door test on your house. They'll model it, and they'll come up with a list of efficiency measures that you can implement. That's an energy rater. An energy auditor is focused on commercial buildings. Two completely different things. An energy auditor has to have certifications, engineer, blah, blah, blah. But an energy rater could be the roofer, for example, contractor. So when you're looking for a rating or somebody to come in on your house, you want an energy rater. And there's a list of them on AHFC's website. An energy auditor, there's a list in the CPACE of energy auditors for commercial spaces. So there's a difference there. It's often confused, but energy raters are for residential facilities, residential houses, and they're relatively inexpensive. Energy auditors are pretty expensive, and it's for commercial facilities.
And I'd say there are a lot of resources on the REAP website, for example, about how you could do your own very rudimentary energy audit or energy rating of sorts on your own home. There's also some very mildly low cost, $100, $150 infrared cameras that you can put onto your cell phone and just see where the heat is escaping around your own home, and you can do that yourself. And generally I feel like folks know what is wrong with their home if they've been there long enough. They know that the windows might be just single pane, double pane, and that they can feel the cold, and maybe that's not the Number one thing that you want to start with, replacing all your windows, but you know that you have a leakage from under your doors and other locations around your house that you can start with.
Yeah, and I might just, because I feel like you set me up perfectly for this, add to that and say that my experience, and I worked the 2008 to, I worked that program, the home energy rebate program, from kind of the policy all the way through to the end of it. And I will say that even during that time, and I think now too, it's harder to find people to do what the raters recommend and to do what the audits recommend than it is to find the raters and the auditors. The people who actually know how to do the work and have the sort of building science background and understand airflow and all of those things. So I think that is it's a different topic, and it often goes to raters and auditors because those are really important. They're making the recommendations, but not very useful unless you can find someone to actually implement the work.
Yeah, the people that benefited most from those programs were the people that were going to do the labor themselves and really sink their teeth into it. Because if you've ever remodeled, it's a lot harder to weatherize a home than to build it right the first time. You open the wall, you're going to find something you didn't expect to find every time, And so the people that really did quite well were the ones that knew they were going to do the work, that got the advice from the professionals that understood the building physics involved, and then got refunded for a portion of that work. That's not my mom, right? My mom's not going to do that. And neither's your son. He's too busy. And so, I think that it is difficult to figure out how that demographic, because you immediately get into a lot of low-income scenarios with that same issue as well. We do have a workforce issue when it comes to with that type of work, because it's skilled and it takes a real holistic look at the house. It's not one-sided.
Yeah, and maybe just because there is a self-proclaimed CCHRC board member, and maybe I know there's more than one in the audience, I will say that I grew up in Fairbanks, and when CCHRC, Cold Climate Housing Research Center, I think, was originally conceived, some of the idea was that it would be a little bit like a cooperative extension for the building sciences. And they have done some amazing work and some amazing research, but really just like stepping into bringing all of the research that has been done and all of the best practices that we know about. And we actually know how to build for cold climates really well. Bringing that into the contractor community and kind of like being that bridge, and the DIY builder community and retrofit community, I think is a valuable space that nobody is currently occupying in the state.
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting this tonight and everything. I think it's such an important conversation to have. If anyone's wondering who the giggling children are in the back, those are mine. I'm going to be raising them here in Anchorage for the next 10, 15 years. So this issue is really, really, really important to me, and I hope that we can also have a conversation about the supply side at some point as well. But focusing back on this demand side, is there like a prioritized list of the best return on dollar investment for is it better to do commercial or homes, or is it in a home itself? Is it better to do a heat pump versus a boiler? Or how do you make decisions when there's so many different options here?
That's tough. I will say that on a household level, I think that there are kind of a little bit regionally dependent. There are some like basic, and there are a lot of people who are much sort of more in building science than I am here, so defer to them, but like windows are almost never your first like highest rate of return, right? And it is definitely what people want to go to because they're attractive, but attic insulation, I think there's kind of a basic list for single family residential anyway.
Yeah, air sealing's my number one. It's not, it's not sexy windows, that's for sure, but I think you get a lot of bang for the buck in the air sealing part.
Especially in a place like Anchorage, in a place like Fairbanks, it was tough when we went about sealing our homes at first, and you had a captive audience because it's cold there. But then everyone had to figure out how to ventilate, you know, because whenever you sell your house you have to ventilate. But you are blessed with so many houses on forced air here that it might not be as tricky or wicked in a place like Anchorage to add ventilation once you air seal. Yeah, I'd agree with you though. I mean, it's air sealing and ventilation, then envelope improvements, usually lid and floor first, then walls, and windows way out there. And the amount that you change your envelope matters. And that takes you do want a professional to look at that, because you would hate to seal up your house and lower your heating bill while simultaneously giving your kids asthma and getting a bunch of mold in your house. So that it is something that is worth talking to a professional about.
Hello, my name is Dr. Steve Conkle, and I've been involved with REAP for about a dozen years or so on the board. And I basically ran for Chugash Electric too 1 year, but we had a field of 9, so it was a pretty crowded field. And I always felt that we needed policy input, like Katie's been talking about. Policy's kind of driving the bus, and that's where we get the money through the policy, and we get the projects, and then we get the institutions, like the Green Bank, and then we get the portfolio projects. But the problem I'm a little more concerned with, that's related to the work you do, is the problem of long-term energy planning. And to give you a little bit of a perspective, the 4th governor of Alaska believed in energy planning enough that we produced a long-term energy plan. We didn't leave it to the legislature or leave it to politics. We wrote a void generator inventory and economic assessment in 1984. Think about it, that's a while ago. And we haven't always had the staff resources to update the economics and the things that we need to make investments. But we've spent over $500 million on projects that have not generated 1 kilowatt hour of electricity. So that to me is a process that isn't a model process. If we ran all government like that, we wouldn't be able to afford things. And so how do you think about all of the good you're doing and collectively the good you're doing, and how that really helps put the lid on other sources that would be used and spread the mix and the efficiency? And things like there's a long-term force rate that goes on, kind of like Barron said, well, you really need more than one source of fuel driving your electricity. Don't be dependent on just one thing. Or especially the heating. And you know, some of these things are things that involve a resource that we have an interest in. But when there's a push comes to shove and there's a crisis, then somebody that's a genius proposes we subsidize the heck out of it. You know, we not collect a certain tax, or there aren't certain problems with certain resources. So how do we move to thinking about investing in the long term, as well as we're kind of putting a lid on things like the natural gas prices if we can tamper down demand. And at its best, you know, maybe you could get 50% improvement, but not probably with the existing housing stock. So there's going to be a limit to how much we can do through these projects. How do we really start investing in things? But we want to keep an open mind, so we change the thing from we can't be dependent on oil to, you know, well, we want to decarbonize, or we've got a problem that we're too dependent on one fuel, and we want to plan. And there's actually energy sources in Alaska that has great diversity, from hydro to geothermal to other things that are not all that unattainable if we had the right investment streams and a little more of a perspective long term. I just wondered what you thought of that. And the good thing is we may have a solution that's right around the corner, and it's called integrated resources planning. And we're doing that for electricity in the rail belt. But we can't subsidize our way out of this problem, which is one thing that tends to happen. We'll just forget property taxes for the LNG, because we'll just build everything magically up here. Okay, well, sorry for the
Thank you, Steve. And I just want to note that I am personally shocked we made it to 7:25 without the gas line coming up. So I thought we were maybe gonna get all the way there, but so anyhow, I'm not gonna talk about the gas line, but I am a little surprised that this is the first time that it came up, and only just I think One of the things that Steve was talking about was the integrated resource plan that is happening for the rail belt right now relates to electricity, and we certainly REAP spends a tremendous amount of time and energy working in that space, but also wants to kind of try and elevate this other space a little bit, and that is kind of thinking more about our thermal energy, which right now in South Central is provided almost exclusively by gas. In Anchorage, about 75% of Matsu and about 75% of the Kenai Peninsula Borough. That's a huge percentage of the population of the state that is relying on a resource that is about to potentially double in cost and then be volatile after that. So I think that's, that's a significant, it's a significant change in our community and in sort of the sustainability and economic health of our community. So we will definitely talk about integrated resource planning and electricity and renewable energy and all of that stuff in other venues, but just really wanted to kind of prioritize the thermal space today. I will say, it's almost 7:30, so I just want to kind of give our panelists an opportunity to kind of any last words. And I want to invite all of you kind of interested folks and to tell other folks who who might be interested too, to reach out to these people and tell them your good ideas, particularly the Alaska Sustainable Energy Corporation, and the municipality of Anchorage. These are sort of, these are public organizations that are there to help provide benefit to the people of Alaska and the people of Anchorage. And so if there is if there are ideas, and I don't feel that sorry to Rochelle because she actually asked me, she was like, I want to hear ideas. I know Melanie does too, but the municipality is going to be on the hook and really be needing to respond to the people who are kind of feeling this the most. So, okay, last words.
Financing is not a bad thing, especially for improvements on homes, on buildings, on projects that are going to save energy costs over the long run and pay for themselves. I know Alaska thinks a lot about grants and subsidies, but most of the country uses financing to fund projects, and I hope that we can make that a little more affordable and accessible for Alaskans.
I think energy resilience and security is a long-term challenge. I certainly don't have all of the solutions. I only have maybe one or two solutions, but it takes everyone participating and educating themselves and getting involved in what their energy bills look like and what they want their economic futures to look like, because energy touches all of that. For us to really kind of start to move the needle.
I think the takeaway from the building side of things is that we address more intelligent demand, more intelligent supply, and reduce demand at the same time. So for your comment, when you talk about, you mentioned the term investment multiple times. Do you invest in the stock market or do you invest in gold? You do both, right? You invest in the stock market in times of peace, and when the world is all going at a good clip, and you invest in gold for when that's not so true, and everything's going a little chaotic. When you invest in something like a gas infrastructure, or a geothermal resource nearby, or an expansion of a large hydro product, that's the stock market. That's for times of peace. We have a new way we want to do things. We want to feed a lot of BTUs, lots into the system. When you invest in energy efficiency, that's your gold. When the world does something really unpredictable, you just need less of whatever you were trying to buy. So you do them at the same time, and that's the wisest way to invest in buildings.
Thanks for having us, and thanks for the conversation. In closing, I'll just reiterate what I said earlier. Anytime you guys can lobby for some more weatherization money, please do so. We're not going to get there doing 6 homes a year, right? So, thank you.
Yeah, and I was a little disingenuous. I actually get the last word. So, and Sean stole it a little bit from me. First, I want to thank you all for coming tonight, and thank you for hanging in here till the end. We are, are in the space until 8 o'clock. So if you want to socialize a little bit and have a glass of wine or something, please feel free to do that. And I guess maybe just underscore Sean's point and speak to the subsidy issue, because I am, I was raised here. I have, 4 generations of my family here, and I want to, and this notion that Alaska is sort of overly subsidized, I think is a narrative that sometimes I struggle with. It is true that kind of we, often look to subsidy before we look to financing, because why would you not? But I also just want to point out that government built the Hoover Dam, government built the Bonneville Power Authority, government, they built the highway system that serves all of America. There's a lot of infrastructure that Alaska just doesn't have that was provided by government, kind of upon which communities could then kind of be built and thrive. The creation of the Denali Commission is a direct acknowledgement of that fact. There are 3 commissions in the country, and they were developed because they were acknowledging that there were areas of the country that didn't receive the same level of federal investment, and so it's harder to do things there, more expensive and just harder. So I just want to say that I think that we shouldn't feel bad about taking subsidies if you can have, and certainly there are some problems, like I was saying to Sean earlier, not all problems can be solved by having money thrown at them, but some can. And if you have, a roof that's about to collapse, you can throw money at it and you can fix that problem. So, yeah, definitely want to reiterate that I think weatherization assistance program funding for low-income households is wildly underfunded, kind of in terms of being able to meet the need, and particularly in the Anchorage and Southcentral area where there are such a large number of low-income households, and our fuel costs are about to change so much. So, on that cheery note, want to thank you all again. I feel cheery mostly because I'm sort of like looking at a rainbow from the stage with the stained glass. So really want to also again thank the Nave and Cook Inlet Housing Authority for having us here, and hopefully this won't be the last of our events here. All right, thank you all.